up, YouTube? I am Cody. This is the Real Sports Talk, and today we're going to be talking some NASCAR. The season's coming in here, and we're not quite points racing yet, but tonight it's all about the money, and that's what the drivers are all going to be going for there. So with this Bud Shootout tonight, it's a 75-lap race, 2 segments. There are going to be 25 drivers. They actually changed up the format from what they did last year with that. It was in the past, I think it was past champions and pole winners from the previous year, and then there was a fan vote. But now this year, it's the top 25 in the points from the previous season, and also people who have won races at Daytona before. So past shootouts, the Coke 400, and the Daytona 500. But you have to be able to get funding in order to race in this event, and you don't want to risk your equipment necessarily that you're going to need to use for the Daytona 500, the big show next week. The purse for this race is over $200,000, and it's going to be more of, I'd say, a test session, like a live test session, rather than just being important as in winning the race, because there were a lot of new rules that NASCAR put into play for this week and at the restrictor plates this season. The fans spoke up. They decided that they didn't like the 2-car tandem racing, even though the drivers preferred that, and NASCAR listened, and they tried to do what they could to get back to the pack racing. So they put in some new cooling systems, reduced the size of that so the less air gets into the engine and the radiator, so the cars overheat easier, and the size of the rear spoiler was reduced by NASCAR, the regulations, and also they made it harder for the bumpers to line up on the cars, so that really kills the purpose of that 2-car tandem, tango, whatever you want to call it, in that sense that it's difficult for cars to hook up and be able to get through corners and make maneuvers. And also, the biggest thing probably is they eliminated that radio communication that you saw between drivers last year and the year before at Talladega. Because when the drivers don't know what the person in front of them is doing, you get accidents like happened in Bud Shootout practice yesterday with Tony Stewart and Kurt Busch, and that ended up in a 4 or 5 car pileup, I think. I saw the video. I forget how many cars were involved, though, actually. There were 4 cars in the big bunch that got piled up. But basically, that radio communication is going to make it very difficult because you don't know what the guy in front of you is going to do. And if he makes a slight movement, like Kurt Busch tried to get to the outside of a slower car and Tony Stewart was pushing him, Tony Stewart tried to compensate and make up for that error that was between the bumpers, and he just took Kurt Busch going into the corner and ended up in a pileup. And with 25 cars on the track, it's going to be it's not going to be good if something like that happens. Jeff Gordon was saying, I think it was earlier this week, that you got to weigh the risk and reward, and he doesn't think it's actually worth it to be doing that drafting until the final lap of the race to try to get that victory, because the risk is just so high there. But all these guys want to win, and they're going to do whatever it takes to go fast. And Dale Jr. was saying they all get kind of dumb when they're out on the track there trying to go for the win, because that's all they want. They got to do whatever it takes to get there. So Bud Shootout tonight. More of a test session rather than an actual. I mean, they're going to enjoy the purse, whoever wins the race, too, but it's going to be important not only for the guys competing, but for the guys watching, actually, just to see how that plays out for when they compete in the Daytona 500 next Sunday. So in this 500, you're going to see some new faces. Not all these guys are going to be in there, but some of them will. And so I'm just going to roll off some of the new faces, some of the stuff that happened in the off-season here, since I didn't get any videos up here in the off-season, so this is going to be kind of a recap of that. And so we got Kasey Kahne, who signed the contract with Hendrick before last season. He had a year with Red Bull because Mark Martin's contract was going through last year for Hendrick. So Kasey Kahne's going to be in the 5-car. Mark Martin is moving to Michael Waltrip Racing. There's a lot of changes going on there. The only driver that's left from last year is Michael Waltrip, of course, is going to be driving a little bit, and also Martin Truex Jr. And so Mark Martin and Michael Waltrip are going to be driving the 55 car. They're going to be splitting races a little bit, and they're going to go forward with that. And Danica is coming to NASCAR this year. They cut Stewart-Haas Racing cut a deal with Dave Blaney's team from last season, So Danica is locked into the first 5 races of the season due to Dave Blaney's performance, because they transferred those provisionals over to the 10 car that Danica Patrick and David Rudiman are going to be splitting. And so they're going to be driving the number 10 car this year. And Clint Boyer moving over from RCR to the 15 car, sponsored by 5 Hour Energy, I believe, which was the 00 car last year that David Rudiman was driving. And AJ Allmendinger, after all the stuff going on in the offseason with Kurt Busch and Penske Racing, he will be moving from the 43 car to the 22 car that Kurt Busch drove last year, and he will be Brad Keselowski's teammate this year at Penske Racing. And after all the bouncing around Kurt Busch did, he was really vocal on the radio the last few seasons, and I think Penske just had enough of it, and they agreed to part ways there, and he will be driving the 51 car for James Finch, and that's going to be something that will be interesting to see, because he's going to play a part in the Daytona 500 and in the Bud Shootout, and we'll have to see how he does with that team, because Finch believes he can actually make that team competitive. Because Kurt Busch is a very talented driver, but he's difficult to please. He could be the most talented driver on the circuit. But also, so another ride that Kurt Busch was looking into possibly getting into is the 43 car, the famous Richard Petty number, and that was taken by, well, wasn't taken, but Eric Almirola was selected over Kurt Busch for that position in that car. So he will be driving the 43 car. It's a 1-year contract for this season, and we'll have to see what happens with that. Eric Almirola is a very good driver, and he got an opportunity a couple years ago to race part-time, and then his opportunity kind of got cut short because of funding and that kind of thing with Earnhardt Racing. And trying to think if it was Earnhardt Ganassi. I don't think it was Earnhardt Ganassi at that point. Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. And that's not even the name. I can't think of the name right now for some reason. But it doesn't sound right. Yeah, Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, DEI. That's what it was at that time. He was in the 8 car, splitting time with Mark Martin. And not the 8 car. What am I saying? The 01 car. Or it might have been the 8 car at that time. I don't know. I'm just going to move on from that. Also, David Reagan is going from the 6 car, which is now going to be piloted part-time by Ricky Stenhouse, and he is moving to the 32 car, Front Row Motorsports, who Regan Smith will finally have a teammate who can really wheel a car, and they could be good there together. And just formed in the last few days here was BEK Racing, formerly the Red Bull Racing team. The 4 car and the 83 car from last year are now going to turn to the 83 and 93 car, which will be driven by Matt Castle, this isn't football, Landon Castle, and Travis Quaffle. So, Landon Castle, he's never really had a full-time ride. He's been jumping around, and it's going to be a good opportunity for him. Hopefully he can make the most of it here. He's going to be sponsored by Burger King, and I don't think Quaffle is a sponsor as of now, but hopefully he gets something throughout the season. He's never really had a great opportunity in the Cup Series, but he is a decent driver, and hopefully he can get something there. So that was kind of the off-season stuff. Now, I won't talk too much about the Daytona 500, but the news here with the Daytona 500 was the 48 team of Jimmy Johnson made illegal modifications to their C-posts that were detected in the first inspection by NASCAR, and they were visible to the naked eye of the inspectors, so I don't really know what was going on there, what they were thinking. But in 2006, when Chad Knaus was caught making illegal modifications to the car, he was forced to leave the track, and that's not going to happen this time. But when that happened, the 48 car went on to win, I believe it was the Daytona 500 and the race after, for the first 2 races of the season with Darian Grubb as his crew chief. Oh, and speaking of Darian Grubb, Tony Stewart did fire Darian Grubb as his crew chief after winning 5 of the 10 races in the chase last season and winning the championship. A lot of people are questioning that move, so we'll have to see how that works out for him. I believe he got Steve Addington as his crew chief now, but we'll see what happens with that. So he might start the season a little slow, getting adapted and coordinated with his new crew chief, but I expect him to be in good form from the halfway point on, and we can see some good stuff from him at the end of the season. So don't be surprised if he's a little slow at the beginning. But yeah, anyway, Knaus wasn't forced to leave the track this time, and NASCAR is saying they won't take action on the matter until after the Daytona 500. So that's going to be, we'll see what happens there with penalties or anything that's associated with that illegal modification that was made to the car. Well, for the Bud Shootout tonight, you got to look out for guys like Kevin Harvick, good restrictor plate racers, and it's really going to be a crapshoot. I mean, that's how these races are. You got Trevor Bayne winning the 500 last year. It's difficult to make a prediction on these races. So I'll have more NASCAR videos for you as the season goes along. First points race is next week, the Daytona 500, Great American Race. We're going to have qualifying, then the Gatorade Duels on Thursday to set the lineup. So check that out after the Bud Shootout tonight. I'll have a video for you, and I'll post that up on this channel. So stay tuned. Thanks for checking it out.